Hi, welcome to my Excel beginner course. In this, I'm going to teach you the 20 basic essential formulas of Excel, which will help you kickstart your Excel journey. So, as a part of module 1, let me introduce to the data set. It consists of student names over here and their marks out of 100 in these 5 subjects. We are going to learn about the formulas, the basic formulas such as sum, average, count, maximum, and minimum. So over here, let's get started with our first formula, which consists of sum. I want to calculate the total marks that Amit has secured, okay, in this examination or in this subject. To do that, okay, there are two ways to do it. First is we can directly make use of the auto sum facility, or we can also use an Excel formula. I'll teach you guys how to use both of them. So to get the total marks that Amit has secured, type equal to, type sum. Now select the range. I have selected the range, close the bracket, and that's how you will get your total marks. To do it for all other students, drag it down, and that's how you'll get your total marks over here. To get the average marks of each and individual students, there's a formula that we can use. Type average is now select the range of numbers for which you want to calculate the average. So I've selected these 5 numbers, 5 subjects marks, close the bracket, and that's how you'll get the average marks that Amit has secured in all of these 5 subjects. You drag it down, and that's how we can get the average marks of each and individual students. Now, let's see how to get the maximum marks that each student has secured in all of these 5 examinations. To get the maximum marks, type equal to. There's a function in Excel that we can use called max. Okay. Now it is asking for the range of numbers, okay, from which we want to calculate the maximum number. So select these range of numbers, close the bracket, type enter, and that's how you can get your maximum numbers. So if you see, 85 is the highest marks that Amit has secured, and the similar is coming out to be as your maximum marks. To find out the minimum, we can do a similar exercise. There's a function called min in Excel, which gives us the minimum value from a range of data. Select again the range of numbers from which you want to calculate a minimum value. Type enter, and as you can see, 69 is the minimum of all these 5 data sets, and that's how you can calculate the minimum value. Moving on to our last basic function, which is count. Okay, to count the number of items in your data set, okay, we can use a function over here, which is count. As it suggests, it counts the number of cells in a range that contain numbers. Select your the range and close the bracket. So that's how you will get your value as 10. So in the beginning, I also mentioned you how to calculate these basic operations without use of any formula. You can make help use of this feature called AutoSum. So over here, if I want to calculate the total marks of the subjects, okay, what I can do is I'll select the cell for which I want to calculate the sum, go over here and click on sum. So if you see, I got a value as 794 over here. Similarly, if I want to calculate the sum or average for these subjects, What I can do is select the range of cells. It gives you an option of sum, average, count, max, min. You can click on average and that's how you'll get the average as 79.7 over here. So this brings an end to our second module, whereby we have learned the basic functions such as sum, average, count, max, min, how to use them with the help of formulas. And these can be applied to your any data set that you're going to work upon. Let's move on to our module 3, okay, whereby we will understand and learn more Excel functions. Hi, welcome to my module 3. In this, we are going to learn about basic functions such as and or. Let me first introduce you what I mean by and function or what does and function in Excel means. So if all the conditions are true, then our output would be true over here. So suppose over here I have three conditions, okay? Condition, I have certain numbers, okay? And I want an output over here. This output will be generated as true when my all internal conditions are true over here, okay? So let's see how an AND function in Excel works. To do this, we'll type and as you can see, it is asking for logics over here. So let's just mention a logic which says that first number should be greater than 10. As you can see, 18 is greater than 10. Second number should be greater than 20. It is also greater than 20. And third number is less than 50. As you can see, all of the conditions are true over here. Okay. That's why I'll get an output as true. If any of the conditions would have been false, I would have got the output as false. So let's try with a second example over here. Let's just say this is less than 30, which is a false statement as 47 is greater than 30. And I'll make the rest of statements as true. This is greater than 40 and this is greater than 2. So if you can see, my second logic and third logic both are correct, but the first logic are incorrect. So as a result, I'll get a output as false over here because one of my statement is incorrect. So I'll get an output as false. The AND function works if and only if your all the conditions are true. If any of the condition is false, the output will get as false. Let's see how it works in case of a text character. Okay, I'll type AND. I'll select the cell A8. I'll type equal to London. So that's how you enter a character in your Excel formulas in between a parenthesis. Select my second cell equal to Paris and select my third cell equal to New York. Given that all the statements are true, I should get output as true, and that's what the output I got. So this is how the AND function works in case of an Excel. Now let's move to OR function. The definition of OR function or how it works is if any of the conditions are true. If there are 4-5 conditions and any one of them is true, your output would be true. Or if any of the condition is false, your output would be false. So over here, I'll type OR function. This is my first logic. I'll select this is greater than 5. This is greater less than 20, which is also true. And this is greater than 30. So this is a false statement which I'm making over here. Let's see what the output that I get over here. So as I said, if any of my conditions are true, out of here, Out of these three conditions, I've made my first and second statement as true. That's why I'm getting the output as true. Let's move on to see how next example works. Or this is in this I'm going to make every statement as false and let's see what the output comes out to be. This is greater than 20. This is greater than 50. And this is greater than 100. So over here I've entered all the incorrect statements and all of my conditions are not satisfying the criteria. So I'm getting an output of false over here. Similarly, let's move on to see how for the third example. I'll make one of the statements true and rest all the false and let's see what output I get. So I'll select A16 which says London. B16 I'll write some ABC and C16 as XYZ. So one of my condition is true and rest all is false. So as per our condition logic, if any one of the conditions are true, my output would be true over here. So I should get true over here and that's what I'm getting. So this is how and or functions work in case of an Excel. Now basis this, we're going to use this logics and or in our advanced data analysis on how to use this in ifs function, nested if function, so on and so forth. Now let's move on to our next condition or next function, which is if. So over here, okay, we are going to learn about two functions of Excel, two major important ones. First is if function and second is if error. What if there's an error in the data set, how to deal with it. So starting with the if function, okay, over here I have a list of student names and their marks out of 100. I want to write over here as a criteria or I want to write over here the result basis my this criteria that if marks is greater than or equal to 40, I should declare the result as pass. Else, if it is less than 40, then I should declare it as a fail. To do that, we can make use of if function in Excel. Okay, so we'll write equal to over here, type if. It is asking for a logical test. What is the criteria on which it should decide the output? So over here, the criteria is marks is greater than or equal to 40. So I'll select the cell. I'll write the criteria greater than or equal to 40. So this I have written my logical test. Now it is asking what if the value is true. So if the value is true, it should throw an output of pass. What if, now I'll close this. Now it is asking me what if the value is false. If it is greater than 40, it should print output as pass. If it is less than 40, it should print output as fail. So over here, I'll write in my third argument, what if the value is false? I'll write fail. So as you can see, since the score is greater than 40, it is declaring the output as pass. We'll drag it down to see how it works for other marks. So if you see 10, it is less than 40. That's why it has declared it as fail. 35 less than 40, that's why the result is also fail over here. And 39, which is also less than 40, it has declared fail over here. Given that we have written equal to sign over here, that's why for the 40 marks, we are getting an output as pass. So that's how you use your if function for your analysis purpose or to bucketize your data into various categories. Moving on to the next function, which is if error, how to handle the data. when there is an error over here. So let's suppose I have a data of column A, B, and I want to divide A by B. So as you can see, I have to divide 10 by 5. It's very simple. I should get the output as 2. Okay. But when I try to do it for others, I'm getting an error over here, like 50 divided by a text. So Excel is not able to calculate it. It's throwing an error. 100 divided by 0, it is saying a divide by 0 error as the value is infinite. So to do that, how we're going to handle this in Excel, we can make use of if error function. How to use this? How to use it? We'll type if error function. What is the value that we want to calculate? What is the operation that we want to do over here? We need to mention it over here as our first argument. So I want to do an operation of division which says 10 divided by 5. Write a comma. Now it is asking me what to do in case of an error. So in case of error, we need to provide him an instruction. We can put a text over here or a general number over here. That is up to your use cases. So over here, I'll put a text which says no error. So given that there was no error, I got the value as 2. If I drag it down further, so it says there's an error because 50 divided by a text number is not possible. That's why it's throwing an error. That there's some error. We can change it to an error over here. Okay. Now it's asking us to divide 100 by 0. What we can write over here is we can copy paste the same formula, and in place of an error we can write divide by 0 error. So that's how you'll get an error over here, but a written error, a textual error, okay, which says that this division is not possible. In place of any text, you can also mention a number over here, okay? So for to do that, you can just simply type any number. Let's say if there's an error, print 5. So that's how it will print 5 over here. Let's do the similar operation for here as well for the last case. And as you can see, 0 divided by 10 is 0. Since there was no error, we didn't get any error value. So that's how your if error function of Excel works, and you can make use of it to handle your data sets. Now, moving on to the most interesting topics in Excel is how to work if there are various conditions. Okay. Suppose I want to calculate the marks of students. Okay. How many students are there who has secured more than 60 marks? Okay. And what is the count of students and what are their total marks? Now, I'll add another criteria. Students who have scored more than 60, but they have also passed the exam over here. I want to find the count of such students, also the total marks that has been secured by these students. So to do that, we can make use of these functions, okay? And how to do this, let's see. So over here, it is asking me a question, number of students who has scored more than 60. So there's a criteria that I need to check upon, that I need to count only those students who has scored more than 60 marks over here. So given that we want to count, we will make use of COUNTIFS function. It is asking for a criteria range. Okay. And next is it is asking for a criteria. So first we will define our criteria range, which is this is my range. Okay, from this I want to take the number of students who have scored more than 60. So once my range is selected, I'll put a comma. Now it is asking for a criteria. So over here, I'll write a criteria that it should be more than 60. So I'll put a parenthesis, type greater than symbol and symbol, and this should be greater than 60. So if you see there are how many students? 1, 2, 3. There are only 3 students who have secured more than 60 marks. So once I click enter, I get the output as 3 if you see over here. So that's how the COUNTIF function works. Okay. Now let's see the criteria when I have an additional criteria over here. It says that students who have secured more than 60 marks and they have also passed. So I have got another criteria to work upon, and for that we need to get the count. So what we will do is we'll again type COUNTIFS function. We'll select the criteria range, define our criteria. My first criteria that it should be greater than 60. So I'll type parentheses and 60. So my first criteria has been defined. Now it's asking that the student should be of their result should be pass over here. So I need to define my second criteria. I'll select the range. Over here, once my range is selected, I'll type a remark as pass. Now, this formula will only count those instances where marks secured has been 60 as is greater than 60 and the result is also pass. Given that there are 3 instances over here, the output I should get is 3. So that's how the count function works. Let's see at the third example. Okay. Over here it says students secured less than or equal to 40 and their result is fail. Let's work on the similar logic then. Type COUNTIFS, select the criteria range. My criteria is it should be less than or equal to 40. So in the parenthesis, I write the less than or equal to symbol and 40. So my first criteria and I have written. Now it is asking me that it is the result should be fail. So I have to select my second criteria and I'll type fail. That's how you enter a text in Excel between a parenthesis. So as you can see, less than 40 and fail, I should get the count as 1, 2, 3. I should get the count as 3. Let's see. Yeah. So this is how we can make use of COUNTIFS function to get the desired data when multiple conditions are there. You can extend this logic, okay, to any number of conditions you want over here, and Excel will throw the output to you. Similar to COUNTIFS function, there's another function called SUMIFS, which helps us to calculate the sum of all the instances when your specific or desired criteria has been met. So over here, moving on to our first use case, I want to calculate the sum of all the marks where students have secured more than 60. To do that, I'll type SUMIFS function over here. It is asking for me the sum range, the array for which I have to calculate the sum. So let's first select that sum range. Okay. It is asking for me the criteria range. Okay. My criteria is that student should score more than 60. So my range becomes this. Okay. I have selected my criteria range and my criteria now is it should be greater than 60. So I'll type parenthesis greater than symbol and 60. So I should be getting the sum of these three numbers. Okay, let's see 257. And if you see the output over here is 257. Let's move on to our second question with some more conditions on it. Now it is saying that students secured more than 60 and also pass. So I need to add one more criteria on top of this existing criteria, which is they should also have their result is also pass. So I'll select SUMIFS, define my sum range. Then this is my criteria range I've selected. And now I have to define a criteria that it should be greater than 60. Now the another criteria is that student should also have passed the exam. So my criteria range becomes this and my criteria 2 is pass. So given that only 3 such students are there, I'll get the output as 257. Let's move on to the last example, which says less than or equal to 40 and fail. I want to calculate the sum of their marks. So we'll type SUMIFS. This is my sum range. Now I have to select the criteria range, which becomes the same data set. My criteria is less than or equal to 40. So I'll type parenthesis less than or equal to and 40. Now my second criteria is the result should be fail. So I'll select my second criteria over here, put a comma, and my criteria they should have failed the exam. So I'll type fail. So I should be getting a sum of these three numbers 10, 35 and 39. Let's see. The output is coming out to be 84. And if you manually sum it 10, 35, 39, this is the output, which is same as 84. So that's how you use your SUMIFS, COUNTIFS function, okay, in an Excel for your data analysis. There's one more function in Excel which we can use to get the average. Suppose I want to, in this similar one, I want to calculate the average of marks where the student has secured more than 60 and they have also passed the exam. I want to calculate the average marks. To do that, we have a function in Excel through which we can calculate the average basis multiple conditions. So we'll type AVERAGEIFS. It is asking for an average range. This works same as SUMIFS. Okay, so we can use the entire logic same as SUMIFS over here to calculate the average. So we have selected the average range over here. Now we'll have to select the criteria range, which is same as this one. My criteria is it should be greater than 60. So we'll write this greater than 60. My criteria ranges, they should have passed the exam. So I'll select my second criteria range and type pass and close the bracket. So I should be getting an average of these three students who has secured more than 60. They have also passed the exam and I should get an average of these three numbers, which comes out to be 85.66. And if you select this, you'll get an output as 86, which has been rounded up to nearest integer. So that's how you can make use of SUMIFS, COUNTIFS, and AVERAGEIFS function for your daily analysis. Let's move on to learn about two functions, okay, in this conditional criterias, which are maximum ifs and minimum ifs, which basically suggest calculate my max number if certain criteria has been met or calculate my minimum number when certain criteria has been met. So over here I have a list of students, their marks and their result, whether they have been passed the exam or whether they have failed the exam. I want to find out the maximum marks of a student who passed the exam. Then what we can do is max if we can make use of maxif function. We have to select the max range, the range of data from which we want to calculate the max. Now it is asking for a criteria. My criteria is the student should have passed the exam. So I'll select my criteria range over here. Now I mention my criteria as my third argument, which says pass. So as you can see, pass and the maximum marks is 98 and the same output I'm getting it over here. Now my second question says that find out the minimum marks of a student who has failed the exam. Similar to MAXIF, we have a function called MINIFS in Excel, which helps us to calculate the minimum value from a range when certain criteria are to be met. So I'll select my minimum range. Now over here as a second argument, I have to define my criteria range. My criteria is this. They should have either passed or failed. And in the last, I have to need to mention the criteria which says fail. So if you can see, the output I should get is should be 10 because this is the minimum marks where student has failed, and that's the output I'm getting. And similar to the last example, whereby I had shown you how the average ifs function work. We need to calculate the average marks of all students who has passed the exam. So to do that, we can make use of average ifs function. It is asking for an average range. So I'll select the average range. It is asking now for a criteria range through which we want to calculate the average. So I'll select the criteria range and my criteria is calculate the average marks of only those students who has passed the exams. We'll type pass and enter. So this is the average marks of all the students who has passed the exams. So this brings to an end of our module 3, whereby we have learned how to use the basic functions such as SUMIFS, COUNTIFS, AVERAGEIFS, MAXIMUMIFS, MINIMUMIFS when desired or certain criterias are met, how to calculate the value, get the output of those data sets. Let's see you in the next class, okay, whereby we'll learn about more advanced functions about lookup, index match, advanced lookup, okay. Hi guys, welcome to module 4, whereby I'm going to teach you how the basic lookup functions of Excel works and how to get the an output and how you can make use of different Excel functions to get the same output. Moving on to the first one, which says VLOOKUP or vertical lookup. So over here, I have a data set which consists of student names and their marks out of 100 in 5 different subjects. I want to get their marks over here. Okay, these are my student names and these are the subjects. I want to get their marks that they have secured over here in this table. So to do that, we can make use of a VLOOKUP function or vertical lookup function. What it basically does is it searches for your desired row from these columns. It will fetch you the data. So over here, I want to calculate the marks of Neha over here. So what we can do is we'll type VLOOKUP. Okay. First, I need to define my lookup value, which says Neha. Okay. Then I have to define my table array. Table array means the entire list of data set through which you want to fetch a value. So this is my entire list of data set. Okay. through which I want to pick up a value. Okay, so I've selected this. Now it is asking me, you want the value from which column index number? Okay, given that I want to calculate Neha's marks for math subject, I need to mention the column name where maths as a subject is over there. So VLOOKUP function always works from left to right. It will always start scanning from left and move on right to scan the right data set that you want. So over here, this is my first column, name, and this is my second column. So maths is the second column name and second column index that I want to capture. So I'll type 2 over here because 2 maths is the second column of my data set. And then I'll have to mention whether I want an approximate or an exact match. So we'll always choose the exact match, which is type 0 over here. And that's how you'll get your value. So if you see, Neha has secured 65 marks in math subject. Similarly, I want to know how much marks Neha has secured in history. I'll make use of the same VLOOKUP function over here. I'll type VLOOKUP, select my lookup value. I want to find the marks of Neha. So I'll select Neha over here. Now I need to select the table array, the entire data set from which I want to fetch a value. I've selected the data set, type comma. Now I need to mention the column index number. Since I'm searching Neha's mark for history subject and history is first, second, third, fourth, fifth column. So I need to mention the fifth column over here and type and do an exact match. So as you can see, Neha's mark in history subject is 77 and the same value I am getting it over here. So to do it for every others students, what we can do, we can drag this formula over here. We will freeze the student names and we'll freeze this range of our cells. Let's go one by one only. Suppose I want to calculate it for Raj. What we can do is type VLOOKUP. Now my lookup value becomes Raj over here. I need to select the table array. So I have selected my entire table array. Now it is asking for a column index number. Given maths is my second column, I'll type 2. I'll do an exact match by writing 0. And that's how you can get your value as 72. If you see, Raj has secured 72 marks in maths. Similar thing can be applied to Simran and okay, and for other subjects. So let's do that. What we can do is we can freeze the cells and drag the formula to get all the values at one go. So to do that, we'll fix this row for Neha. We'll freeze our range over here, A1 to F8, so that it doesn't change when we drag it. For Raj, we can fix this cell. So once you drag it, you can get the value of all the marks of the students for the maths exam. For history, what we can do is freeze again the student name, freeze the cell range, click on enter and drag it. So that's how you can get to see the marks of Raj secured in history, which is 70. And as you can see, Raj has secured 70 marks in the history examination. Similarly, for science, what we can do is copy paste the same formula. My range is selected, lookup value is Neha, range has been selected. Now science is in which column? It is in first, second, third. So I need to mention instead of 5, I need to write 3 over here. And that's how you can see Neha has secured 73 marks in science subject. So this is how you can make use of VLOOKUP functions to fetch the data as per your requirement. Now, given that we have learned VLOOKUP function which scans for a value against a column, which scans for a row value against a column, there's another function called HLOOKUP, okay, which is horizontal lookup. What it does is it scans for a column value against a row, okay. So let me teach you one example of it. Suppose I want to know the marks secured by Neha in math subject, and we can do this by using a HLOOKUP function as well. I need to mention my lookup value, which is maths. I need to define my table array over here. I'll freeze this. I need to define my table array. So I've selected my range. I've freezed it by pressing F4. Now I need to write the row index number over here. Given that I need to mention at what row Neha names appear in this table array. So if you count from this first instance, this is first row, second row, third row, and this is the fourth row. So I need to mention 4 over here. It is now, and it is asking for a true match or a false match, approximate match or exact match. So we will select exact match by writing 0. And that's how I got my output as 65. If you see, Neha has secured 65 in minutes. So that's how a horizontal lookup function works. It scans for a value against a column from the mentioned row fields. We can do this activity for the other subjects that Neha secured marks upon. Moving on to Raj, we'll do one more example. I want to calculate the marks secured by Raj in maths, history, and science. We can make use of HLOOKUP function. I need to select my lookup value, which is maths, table array. This is my table array. And Raj is at what position in this table array? I need to mention the same. So first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. So Raj is at sixth position. I need to mention six. And that's how you will get the values of Raj. We can drag it down to calculate his marks in any other subjects. And that's how the HLOOKUP function works. So you have learned how to use VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP functions of Excel. Let's move on to a more better versions of VLOOKUP function, which is an index match function. So to start with an index match function, we need to first understand what is a match function. So what match function does it states you the position of the data set that you want. So suppose I want to find out at what position Neha is in this entire range of cells. Okay. So I can see it is at fourth position. But how to get it through a formula? For that we can make use of a match function. Okay. So over here I want to find out the row position of Neha. And to do that using a match function, we can write match. It is asking for a lookup value. So I want to find the position of Neha. So I'll select the lookup value as Neha over here. Now it is asking for a lookup array. So from the which data range you want to find the position of Neha over there. So we'll select the data set or data array over here. We'll put a comma and it is asking for a match type. So I'll select an exact match by pressing 0. So this is the position of Neha. If you see, my range is starting from row number 2. So from row number 2, Neha is at which position? First, second, third. So that's why I'm getting an output of as 3 over here. So this is how match function works. It gives you the relative position of the data that you want against an array that you have defined. So the way we have calculated the relative position against a row, we can do it similarly for a column as well. Suppose I want to find out the relative position of the column or the data called English in this column. So to do that, what we can do is we can again make use of match function. Select my lookup value, which is English. Select my lookup array. My lookup array is this. In this, I want to find out at what position my letter English or the word English is there. So I've selected my range. Now I need to mention the match type. I'll select exact match. And as if you can see, starting from this data set A, the word English is at which position? First, second, third, and fourth. So I should get the output as 4, and this is what I'm getting with the help of match function. So that's how you can make use of match functions over here. Now, given that you have understood how match function works, let's move on to its advanced version. Okay, how to use an index match function. Okay, this is an advanced version of VLOOKUP function. Okay, the VLOOKUP works only from left to right, but index match function over here, it can work in any direction. You can either go from right to left or left to right. So with the same example that we did for VLOOKUP, let's see. Suppose I want to find out the marks secured by these students, okay, in these subjects, and I want to fetch it with the help of an index match function. Let's see how to do it. So we'll type index. It is asking me to define my array. So my marks array consists of this range, which is from B2 to F8. I'll freeze it. Okay. Now it is asking me the row number. Okay. Row number at from what position I want to fetch the value. To get the row number of Neha, we can use the match function just like we did it over here. What we can do is we can type match. It is asking for a lookup value. I need to find out the row position of Neha. So I'll first select my lookup value as my first argument as Neha. I'll freeze this column. It is asking me to define the lookup array. So we'll define the lookup array of Neha, and it is asking for an exact match. So that's how my row is defined. Okay. Row number has been defined because in the previous example, we see Neha position was third in the entire array. And through match function, we gave the input as 4 over here. Now it is asking for a column position. Now we need to find out at what position my maths is there in this entire column. So to do that, we will again make use of match function. We'll define a lookup array. Okay, so this is my array, lookup value, put a comma, and then define a lookup array. So my array over here now starts from column B, and maths is the only first column over here. So I should be getting a value as 1 in place of column. I'll define the exact match as 0, and that's how my match function has also been entered. Now I'll close the entire parenthesis of the index function by adding another parenthesis, a closing bracket. So that's how we can get the value of the marks secured by Neha in math subject by indexing my rows and indexing my columns. Let's see another example whereby I'll find out the marks secured by Raj in history subject using an index match function. So we'll type index, select an array. So this is my array. I'll type match. Now I need to find out the row position of Raj from this range. So what I'll do, I'll take help of match function. My lookup value is Raj. My lookup array. This is my lookup array. I'll define an exact match type by pressing 0. Now I need to define the column number and at what position my history subject is from this list of columns. So again, I'll take help of match function, define a lookup value. I'll freeze the row. This is my lookup array. And as you can see, history is at first, second, third, fourth. So for Raj and history subject, I should be getting output as 17. So I have defined my match function array as well. I'll select exact match. I close my index function bracket. And as you can see, I got the value as 70. So this is how your index match function works. Okay. It is an advanced version of VLOOKUP. You can select or you can get the position numbers of any row or any column and get the desired data output against that row and column. We can drag it to get the values of other students and marks in subjects, and that's how your index match function works. Hope you have learned something new from this index match function. Now moving on to the another more advanced feature of Excel, a lookup feature of Excel, which is an XLOOKUP. So just like an index match function, it is also a non-directional. You can either look up a value from left side or a right side. So how it works is, okay, let me just show you an example. Suppose I want to find out the marks of students. Okay, it's a similar example that we have learned before using VLOOKUP or index match. Here now we are going to make use of XLOOKUP. It's more fast and more robust compared to VLOOKUP, and it also consists of very simple arguments. So let's see how it works. We'll type an XLOOKUP over here. It is asking me for a lookup value. Okay. So I'll select Neha as my lookup value. Okay. It is asking me for a lookup array. Uh, for that, we will select at which column the Neha's name is over there. Okay. So Neha's name is in the first column. So I'll select this cell, this entire cell, or I can select this range lookup as my lookup array. Now it is asking me for a return array. I want to find the maths Neha's mark in maths exam, and maths exam is in this array. The maths exam marks are in this array. So I'll select this as my return array. I'll close the bracket and I should be getting the value as 65, and that's how the XLOOKUP function works. So in this you need to just basically define your initial array whereby where your value resides, lookup value resides, and the final or return array, which means that which value you want to pick, and you need to select only those specific columns only. So let's take another example of Raj, how it works for it. I want to find out the Raj marks in history. So I'll type XLOOKUP. I need to select the lookup value as Raj, put a comma. Raj is in my first column, so I'll select this as my lookup array. And I need to now mention my return array. My return array is I want the Raj marks in history, so I'll select my return array is history. That is column E. So that's how I got the value of Raj marks in history as 70 over here. Let's take a final example. I want to find out Simran's marks in science. To do that, what we can do is select XLOOKUP, select my lookup value. I need to define my lookup array. So I've defined my lookup array as this. This is where Simran's name resides in this array. And I want to find out Simran's marks in science. So I need to select my return array as this, where the science columns data are there, science examination marks are there. That's how you close the bracket, and I'm getting the value as 87. So that's how your lookup XLOOKUP function works. You can also make use of XLOOKUP function to calculate the value from right to left as well. So I'll take one example of it. I'll explain you how it works. Suppose I want to know what is the marks, okay, where of the student where goal is in to become an MBA, okay, and student name is Raj over here. So let's do it for entire data set. Wherever we will have a match, we can get to know about it. Oh, we need to make a change this to subject. So I'll select maths, English, science. I want to know the marks of the students in these subjects where the goal is to become an MBA, doctor, or influencer. So let's just do it for MBA and science combination. I'll type XLOOKUP. Here my lookup value is find out the marks of a student, or find out where the goal of a student is to become an MBA and his mark in science subject. So I'll select my lookup value as this. I need to define my lookup array. So my initial value resides in this column. The MBA resides in this column. So I'll select this as in my first array, and I need to define my return array, which says I need to find out the marks of this for the science subject. So I'll select science as my second array or return array. Close the bracket, and 91. That's what the value I got over here. If you see MBA science exam, 91 marks has been obtained. Let's take one more example. Okay. I need to find out the marks secured by an influencer in the English subject. So I'll select XLOOKUP. My lookup value is influencer. My lookup array is this. And my return array, I need to select the English subject mark. So I'll select this as my return array for English. Close the parenthesis. 91. If you see, 91 is the marks of influencer in English subject. So that's how your XLOOKUP function works. It works in both the cases from left to right and also from right to left. Let's move to the last important function, which has a very much importance in data analysis, which is a sum product. Okay. What it does is it's basically does a quick multiplication for of your data set. Suppose, okay, I have a data set which says a list of items. Okay. In column B, I've mentioned what is the cost per item. In column C, I've mentioned what is the quantity, and I want to know the total cost of the entire transaction. So let's just calculate the individual total cost of these items, which is my basically cost per item into the quantity. So smartphone is worth of $2,500. So on and so forth. I'll calculate the total cost for each and individual items. Now, to calculate the total cost, what we can do is take a simple sum of it and calculate select the range and calculate the value, which comes out to be $21,425. But if I have to do it quickly without doing all of these things, I want to find out what is the total value of this entire transaction. I can make use of some product. Okay, let's see how it works. We'll type equal to select some product. In this, I need to define my first array, which is this. I will define my entire cost array over here. Select a comma. I need to define my second array, which is quantity. So I'll select the second array, which is quantity, and I'll close the bracket. What it does is once I press enter, it gives me the same value as the total cost. So in the backend, the sum product formula, what it does, it individually multiplies the arrays amongst each other. So 250 is multiplied by 10, 750 is multiplied by 15, 125 is multiplied by 25, so on and so forth. And that's how you get the value as $21,425. So it's a quick way to get the total of your entire data set rather than individually calculating it. So this brings to an end of our Excel beginner course, whereby we learned how the basic Excel formulas work, the 20 basic essential Excel formulas which you can use to perform your further data analysis. Towards the end of this course, I've also shared a file for your practice questions. Okay, for your practice, whereby I've shared a data set and gave few questions which will help you think critically, which will help you to apply these formulas, and through this you will gain some confidence in your data analysis, and this will help you enrich your Excel knowledge. I hope you have learned something new. Let's meet on our next session, which would be on a more advanced, how to use the advanced Excel functions, how to do an advanced data cleanup, and how to create a dashboards.